All right, today we're cracking open one of history's biggest mysteries, Leonardo da Vinci's personal writings. For centuries, these notebooks were basically a forbidden world, just filled with secrets. Secrets that could have turned society completely on its head.
Okay, I want you to picture this. It's the middle of the night. A man has just died. And another guy, this figure with a long white beard, he cuts open the body. He starts pulling out organs and just furiously scribbling notes. But here's the crazy part. He's writing everything in reverse. Yeah, that man was Leonardo da Vinci, and this was the start of his secret legacy.
So we see his notebooks, they were like a universe of ideas, literally centuries ahead of their time. And all of it was locked away behind this bizarre code. So it brings us to this huge question, one that historians have been puzzling over for like 500 years. What was Leonardo da Vinci so desperate to hide?
Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this secret, you first have to grasp the sheer scale of what he left behind. I mean, this wasn't just some diary. No, it was the blueprint of a mind that was literally seeing the future.
Yeah, you're seeing that right. 13,000 pages. Just this sprawling, kind of chaotic collection of thoughts, inventions, observations. It mapped out his entire inner world. This was pure genius, just poured out onto paper. And just look at what was inside these pages. I mean, designs for flying machines, helicopters, and armored tanks 400 years before they were invented, hyper-detailed anatomical drawings, so precise they could rival modern scans. He was even trying to find, the mathematical formula for beauty and the physical location of the human soul. I mean, this wasn't just thinking outside the box. This guy was operating in a completely different dimension.
And here's the real kicker. Every single page, encrypted. He wrote everything from right to left in this perfect mirror script. So for centuries, all these incredible ideas were completely unreadable to the rest of the world. This was a deliberate act, right? He was trying to hide something. But why?
Well, the most popular theory, the one you hear all the time, it points to one incredibly powerful institution that Leonardo, he had every reason to fear. For a long time, the answers seemed pretty obvious, right? He was afraid of the church. I mean, think about it. In 16th century Italy, the church had absolute power. And a lot of Leonardo's discoveries, especially his work on human anatomy and astronomy, they flew directly in the face of religious doctrine. He was playing with fire, for sure. And the danger was immense. We're not talking hypotheticals here. In 1513, Leonardo himself was investigated by the Pope. Then, about a century later, the philosopher Giordano Bruno was literally burned alive for his theories about the cosmos. And in 1633, you have Galileo being imprisoned for life just for saying the Earth revolves around the sun. So yeah, the threat of torture and death for your ideas, it was very, very real. So the whole hiding from the church theory, it makes perfect sense, right? But this is where the story takes a really fascinating turn. It turns out that's only half the truth. The real reason for his secrecy, it's way more personal, way more complex. It wasn't just about hiding from the world. It was about how his mind was fundamentally built to see the world differently. And to find the origin of that code, of that unique way of seeing things, we have to go all the way back to his childhood. A childhood that was, unfortunately, defined by shame and rejection. You see, Leonardo was born an outsider from day one. He was illegitimate, which meant he was labeled a devil's child. He was left-handed, which back then was also seen as a mark of the devil. Because of all this, he was denied any formal schooling, and he had no rights to land or property. Society had basically branded him a lost cause right from the start. But all of that rejection, it ended up becoming his superpower. Because he was denied access to traditional knowledge, he was forced to rely on the one thing nobody could take from him, his own eyes. He decided, if the world will not see me, then I will see the world for myself. He decided to learn directly from the greatest teacher of all, nature. Observation, that became his new language. And you know what? The things he discovered just by looking, without all the preconceived notions everyone else had, would end up rewriting the rules of both science and art forever. Okay, get this. As a young boy, he's just staring at a tree, right? And he notices something incredible. The volume of the main trunk is equal to the combined volume of all its branches. Today, we know this as Leonardo's rule. It's a fundamental law of network flow that governs everything from how our arteries work to how internet traffic is distributed. He saw this universal pattern just by looking at a tree. And he did the exact same thing with art. He'd look out at distant mountains and realize,
They look less detailed, kind of blurry, and they have a bluish tint. He was literally observing the physics of how light scatters in the atmosphere. And that simple observation became a fundamental rule of art called atmospheric perspective, a technique that totally revolutionized landscape painting.
So here's the really crucial point, the thing that made him Leonardo. Where you and I might see just a beautiful landscape, he saw the physics and biology behind it. He saw the hidden patterns. This was his whole philosophy, what he called sapere vedere, which basically means knowing how to see.
But this unique way of seeing the world, it was about to be sharpened by a really traumatic event. One that would drive him into total isolation and unlock his most profound and, frankly, his most disturbing work.
So in 1476, when he's just 24 years old, an anonymous letter gets dropped in a public box, accusing Leonardo of sodomy, a crime that was punishable by death. We're talking torture and being burned alive. And even though he was eventually acquitted, the damage was done. His reputation was absolutely shattered.
And the pain of that public humiliation, it was so deep that Leonardo just retreated from the world. Completely. For 4 years, he basically locked himself away. His notebooks became his entire world. They were his only companions, his refuge. And it was in this intense, profound isolation that his obsession with understanding the human body led him to start illegally dissecting human corpses.
You can hear it in his own words. He wrote, "I isolate myself so that the failure of the world cannot reach me." See, his notebooks weren't just for hiding ideas from the church anymore. They became a fortress, designed to protect his very soul from a world that had turned its back on him.
And this is where the great paradox of Leonardo really comes into focus. This isolation, it fueled his genius, but it also fueled a darker side. I mean, this was a man who was a pacifist, a vegetarian, who loved animals so much he would buy caged birds just to set them free. And yet, in the pages of those same notebooks, he designed some of the most terrifying weapons of mass destruction imaginable. So what gives? Was he a hero or a villain? What drove this huge conflict inside him? And if his notebooks really held the key to advancing civilization by centuries, why did he keep them hidden? And maybe the biggest mystery of all, why did the world's greatest genius die calling himself a failure? Those are the questions we're going to tackle next.